Hi, I'm Mark, and today I want to talk about another scandal. But surprise, it's not the Tories, it's Labour. For the British opposition leader Keir Starmer, things are going to be rock solid, he thought. In 2024, he wants to lead his Labour Party back to power after 14 long years of opposition. Given the state of the affair-ridden and fractious Conservatives, well, that didn't seem really difficult. Boris Johnson fell over Partygate in the summer of 22. While citizens had to observe the lockdown rules during the pandemic years, there was a lot of alcohol and partying at the seat of government. And successor Liz Truss had to leave after just 7 weeks. To set himself apart from the Conservative moral decline, Starmer wanted Mrs. Clean Woman to be his new campaign chief of staff. Sue Gray was the government's ethics officer from 2012 to 2018, and although she has since had different duties, led the investigation into the Partygate affair in the winter of 21 and 22. Her report was published in May 22 and led to Johnson's downfall a little later. But now Starmer will have to wait a very long time for his new chief of staff, or have to do without her altogether. Because in the meantime, it has become known that Sue Gray has been negotiating with Starmer since November about moving to the office of the opposition leader. Johnson was no longer Prime Minister, but investigations were still ongoing into the extent to which he lied to Parliament in the course of investigating his scandals. And Gray advised the Conservative majority faction as an ethics expert. The Tories are now using this to counterattack. Conflict of interest is the most harmless accusation leveled at Mrs. Cleaner Gray. Why didn't she, who needs to know the rules for job changes for senior civil servants, alerted regulators to Labour's bid early on? And why only quit her government job in March when a new job became public knowledge? How can a civil servant negotiate with the leader of the opposition for the post of Chief of Staff while advising the government on sensitive issues? That was asked by Tory MP Peter Bone. Anonymous Tories in Boris Johnson's favourite newspaper, The Telegraph, are raising suspicions of a conspiracy going back to the time of the Gray-led investigations into the Johnson affairs. Starmer denies that. And Gray's fate now rests in the hands of ACOBA, the commission that oversees moves from high government posts to other areas. The British media expect that they will give Gray a cooling off period at least until the end of the year before she's allowed to change. They can even impose up to 2 years. And meanwhile, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is now ahead of Labour leader Keir Starmer in a survey of who the British prefer as head of government. And even among workers, they are at level there. And previously, Starmer had been first choice for the Brits since November 2021. The Sue Gray report, just to remind everyone, is a document that was commissioned by the UK government to investigate the circumstances surrounding a party that allegedly took place at 10 Downing Street, the residence of the British Prime Minister, during the COVID-19 lockdown in December 2020, among others. The party in question was allegedly held on December 18th in 2020, at a time when strict lockdown restrictions were in place in the UK and social gatherings were banned. The party was reported to have been attended by staff members of the Prime Minister, including, and that's the important part as well, most of his senior advisors. The report was conducted by Sue Gray, a senior civil servant who was tasked with investigating whether any COVID-19 rules or guidelines were broken during the alleged party. The Sue Gray report is a highly anticipated document that was commissioned by the UK government to investigate the alleged party that took place at 10 Downing Street during that time. We all know this report now, but still. The allegations surrounding the party that took place in 20 and surfaced in November 2021, I guess, when a video was leaked that the media that appeared to show staff members at 10 Downing Street joking about a party that took place the previous year. The video sparked widespread outrage as it appeared to show that government officials were flouting COVID-19 rules while the rest of the country was under strict lockdown restrictions. The UK Prime Minister of the time, Boris Johnson, initially denied that any party had taken place, but as pressure mounted, he eventually admitted that a work event had taken place on the same day as the alleged party. However, he still insisted that no COVID-19 rules had been broken. The Sue Gray report was then commissioned to investigate these allegations and to provide an impartial assessment of what had happened. But nevertheless, April has not been a good month for Britain's political elite overall. Nicola Sturgeon, until recently Scotland's First Minister, had the police in her house. In London, the Tories and Labour lost two of their best-known faces, and the head of state, Charles III, has some coronation trouble. If the participants do not yet have any anti-stress balls, they should urgently get some now. Because I want to recap a bit. With the bad news started in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon had been fighting for years to free her from the British yoke. Her party, the SNP, regularly won elections as a result, and in February, Sturgeon surprisingly resigned as Scotland's First Minister to have more private life. No one who knew this so-called Joan of Arc and her ambitions could believe that. As it turns out, the reasons behind Sturgeon's departure were far more complex, and Scottish police are currently trying to uncover the whereabouts of SNP donations. Originally intended for another independence referendum, they seem to have found other uses, including a fancy RV parked at Sturgeon's mother-in-law's. And the sudden resignation of the Conservative Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Justice Dominic Raab at the end of April was hard for the Tories, but different. In the summer of 21, while Afghanistan was sinking into the Taliban chaos, Raab preferred to stay on vacation instead of dealing with Britons and their Afghan employees from Kabul to get rescued. At the time, he should have been thrown out, but nothing like that happened. He has now resigned because he's said to have thrown tomatoes at employees. The tomatoes are part of his lunchtime sandwich or something. He could get tomatoes. That's to see the rich people. Raab always drank the energy drink Vitamin Volcano, which earned him the obvious nickname Vitamin Volcano, and the man is certainly anything but an empathetic boss, but the true background of the story remains opaque until this day. The tomato allegations could also have been an intrigue by his top officials who wanted to get rid of him. Foreign Office officials have been known to either love or hate their foreign ministers. The most popular was said to be Ernest Bevin. From 1881 to 1951 he lived, who always ordered sandwiches for everyone. But not only did the SNP and the Tories make fools of themselves in April, Labour also had a problem. Because the stress ball was needed because of Diane Abbott. Even I needed one because of her. In 1987, she became the first black MP to be elected to Parliament, and the Cambridge graduate is believed to be the longtime confidant of former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Many British Jews left the Labour Party because of Corbyn's anti-Semitism, and Abbott does not appear to be encouraging their return. Jews, like redheads and Irish, would have experienced prejudice, she argued in The Observer, but not racism. After all, they wouldn't have been shipped off as slaves or had to sit in the back of the bus. And as I said earlier, no, they have been gassed and burned. Abbott later apologized for the statements, but from now she only sits as an independent member of the House of Commons. So, while the political elite fought over RVs, tomatoes, and prejudice against redheads, Charles III will have the party of his life. The coronation was set to cost £100 million, which was paid by taxpayers' money. Estimated at £1.8 billion, Charles is not sharing the cost, but he has been rehearsing the ceremony for weeks in a specially recreated setting at Buckingham Palace. Unfortunately, his advisors, mostly from the Foreign Office, have no idea what makes the average Brit tick, obviously. They want to make the spectacle more relevant with hip elements, and this was intended to attract young people who, according to surveys, are no longer interested in the monarchy anyway. And the hardcore royalists, on the other hand, feel ignored, and Meghan also speaks up again. In an unpublished letter to her father-in-law Charles, She's said to have outed the person who speculated about the color of her unborn child's skin. The big, so far unsolved question is, who did it? Was it Camilla? Was it Anne? Were they all together? But this just fits in, and that's why I included this, with the allegations of racism in the country growing. And I won't talk about Abbott again. I like my blood pressure the way it is right now. But this is an issue that needs to be addressed. We have a similar issue here in Germany, but on a lower scale than in the UK at the moment, I'm sorry to say. We still have it and we have to deal with it, but the UK also has to deal with it urgently. But their government doesn't even want to, as it looks. Nevertheless, I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.